Since they're heavily reliant on the telcos with the digital currency, how will this really pan out?
From what perspective? The regulator's perspective?
Regulator's perspective, yes.
For me, I think that firstly, it is interesting to see central bank start to get into an innovative mindset. We haven't seen this before, and the whole conversation around the digital currency is actually a reflection of a change of the mindset in the Central Bank of Kenya. I do hope, for example, that they are not going to be doing this from a commercial perspective with a profit motive, because I think as a regulator, they need to stick to their role as a regulator. However, as they are also charged with the responsibility of being the custodians of our monetary system. So, I mean, trying to come up with new innovations like the digital currencies is okay. And I hope that as they are having those conversations, they're also expanding their thinking, because we also cannot hide ourselves from the conversation around cryptocurrency that is taking place today globally. I mean, many economies are moving away from traditional forms of funds to cryptocurrency. So we also need to see the central bank start to open up a conversation in that direction, and to see what we can do around that ecosystem.
And a lot of countries also, they're going that way. We know China, they've also introduced the digital currency at the end of the day. Do you think we have the wherewithal, the infrastructure as it is right now, or is way too early in the day?
I mean, I think for me, innovation is innovation. And anything that can allow us to step out from our comfort zones and be able to chart a new course is highly welcome. I mean, in 2007, when Safaricom says they're going to launch M-Pesa, like I said to you, I was in the room. I was in the hall when Michael Joseph launched M-Pesa at the Grand Regency.
Yes.
And we thought it was just yet another nuisance in terms of the things that we have to vend. And we actually laugh. Every time I meet Michael, we are laughing about it, because the reality is that we didn't think that it would be such a transformational and powerful transactional tool. And again, similarly, I mean, the world is moving, like Professor here says. I mean, you can spend weeks on end today without interacting with hard cash. People are walking around without wallets anymore because your wallet's in your phone. So the whole economy is moving forward, and I think for me, I welcome the innovative thinking at the Central Bank of Kenya.
That particular hitch, how many Kenyans own smartphone, is also a big question. Even if we are rolling this digital currency, as it were, that will be the biggest hitch. I think also headlining the Business Daily was that particular story of how many Kenyans are owning smartphones.
First of all, I think you're asking about where Bunyasi Sakwa is. I think you forget that today is the 24th.
Is it 24th?
Today is the 24th, so there are 3 more weeks to nominations. And the last time I checked, Bunyasi Sakwa is running for governor. So life is very difficult. So we must just wish Bunyasi well. When it has to come, we need to understand.
But I should have communicated. I think
something might have happened at midnight that affects whether he will be the governor candidate for his party in 3 weeks or not. If you saw yesterday, there was negotiations between the Honorable Malala and the Honorable Boni Halwale. So there are many things happening in the life of politicians. So I sympathize with Bunyasi, and I think we must accept when he's not here, because Bunyasi is normally a very good debater. He's normally here on time, so something must have happened.
True,
But let's go back to the questions you've asked about. The first question is about how many people own smartphones. You know, when we speak, we say very few people own smartphones in Kenya. That's what we say. But when you walk across the country, the reality is that Kenyans have embraced technology. The reality. When I go to the village, before I used to buy for my auntie a normal phone, a kabambe. Nowadays, when you buy her phone, she says, "Anaweza piga picha." So even for the old lady,
selfie.
Yes, even for the old lady, they are starting to embrace technology.
Yes.
We cannot operate on a 20th century mentality in a 21st century world. It's not possible. During the break, we're having a debate with Kiprono and talking about law and saying, over the last few years, lawyers have actually been complaining about the digitization of the land registry. And the complaint is, it's going to take business away from us. Why? Because we are used to the traditional conveyancing. The reality is that the world is innovating and the world is going to technology. So anybody who does not embrace technology, you read the book about Who Moved My Cheese?
Yes.
Your cheese will have been moved. And that, for me, is something that will affect the regulators as affects the ordinary person. What does that then mean for what CBK is doing? A few weeks ago, I was having a discussion with a friend of mine who is in the telco sector, and he was telling me, today, if you go to Facebook and you want to do an advertisement in Facebook, he asked me, do you know you pay for the advertisement? And he says, try and pay, Kiprono, just try and pay for it, just send 500 and ask yourself, where does that money go? You'll find that the account to which the money goes is not here in Kenya. It is some account, I think, in Greece or somewhere else. What does that mean for CBK? What does that mean even for Safaricom? They are using your platform to run their services, but when they are paying for some place out of Kenya. So you can't regulate them. So if you are CBK, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to start being much more innovative to ask when Kiprono is trading and doing things, for example, on Facebook and running on the platform, because the platform they are running on is the platform of our IT. They are running on Safaricom or on Airtel. How are these companies also benefiting from that? That requires regulation and that requires innovation. So in my view, I think the move towards digital currency is a useful thing. You said, does that make us much more vulnerable? Before Safaricom came, we had KPTC, isn't it? Kenya Post and Telecommunication Company. What did we do with it as a country? We ran it down. So we ran down our businesses, our government-owned businesses that would actually have helped us to be able to address some of these things about ensuring not everything is privatized. I think we must learn as we move forward that innovation is here to stay, but two, on critical sectors, what is the role of government? The role of government must be facilitated, but lastly, when we have parastatals that are performing some critical functions, we must stop seeing those parastatals as cash cows, things that we just lose money from. We must be able to put our money where our mouth is, because you cannot be able to defend yourself by using law to stop things. You must say in areas which are critical for us as a country, we'll then run them from a government perspective, but run them profitably. Unless we have that that innovation mind, I think we will be behind and our chiefs will have moved.
Well, I'm interested in mentioning KPTC because I think, first of all, was it really run down, as it were, or it was a case of the unbundling? Now we have the Kenya Post and telecommunications, being different, and now the birth of Safaricom, even through that particular unbundling at the end of the day. But the unbundling also brought the demise of Kenya Post, as it were, which was heavily reliant, of course, on telecommunications by then. But things have changed right now with the entry of email. Could that also be a very good learning point and a case point of how unbundling can also adversely affect other side of a business? Because maybe M-Pesa is feeding other channels or business operating procedures of Safaricom on the other side. So we do not know how the structure is at the end of the day. Just briefly.
I don't think that unbundling is the reason why KPTC failed. KPTC failed for two reasons, in my view. KPTC failed, one, because of lack of innovation. We were not moving with the times. But secondly, KPTC failed because of our cancer of corruption and mismanaging of public enterprise. That's my personal view as to why it failed. I think unbundling is not a solution to the fundamental problems.
All right.
And unbundling is just in terms of how it operates, but you must
But where was the birth of Safaricom? You were here. I'll come to Bill Okero just momentarily. Where was the birth of Safaricom? Wasn't it not within the remit of telecommunications, the KPTC?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Safaricom was actually in the telecommunications, the Kenya Post and telecommunications at the end of the day. That's where the idea was birthed, wasn't it?
You see, the whole thing is, KPTC was a company that operated in the old system of Kenya. I mean, the management was part of the political patronage. They didn't have the competencies. They didn't even understand the businesses that they were in. When Safaricom, and I think, things tend to move so quickly in this sort of industries that even Safaricom itself, when Vodafone did its first business proposal, they anticipated the market cap size to be about 150,000 mobile phone users.
Yeah.
Today we're at 30 million and still counting. So similarly, I mean, KPTC, if you look at it, they were in the business of providing fixed lines mainly to government and to homes and etc. They never saw the move into the new economy for where mobile phones becomes the norm. I mean, I think KPTC just went through a Kodak moment. You remember the story of Kodak? Yeah. I mean, Kodak were told that, look, photography is going to move from the old spool into digital photography, and they said, no, it's not going to happen. And what happened the next day? There was no Kodak. Yeah, and the whole platform had shifted. I mean, similarly, media, where you are, Debal and I am also in media, I mean, we are going through a huge transformation today. I mean, in the vending of news and the selling of news, I mean, today we are in the age of citizen reportage. Anything significant politically, economically, or whatsoever that takes place globally is almost reported in real time. I mean, we will, just now when we're sitting here on our own phones, there's unfolding stories from all over the world. So, I mean, now, if a news house like yours that would be selling news, say traditionally, and selling the adverts around the news, what news are they selling? Because if it's a 9 o'clock news in the evening, and then they'll be telling us about what happened in the country the whole day, literally 80% of the people already have that information.
Thank you. Bill Okero, first of all, I want to believe that this particular innovation of M-Pesa and the birth of Safaricom will have been within the remit of telecommunications. Michael Joseph, was in the telcos by then. He was actually part of KPTC, if I'm not really wrong. You can actually just take us or hack back into history and give us just a sense of where it began and where did KPTC lose it?
No, I think it all began in the...
Yeah, we can remember the stories of, was it Mambo Tolea, if you may remind me?
Yeah, but it's all, no, I think it started with liberalization of the economy when the government started selling off most of its institutions. And this was the trend, you remember when Margaret Thatcher and all this Reagan, this time. So it's something that has to do with liberalization of the economy and government moving out of state corporations, government moving out of business, and and so forth. So and Safaricom came on board. Of course, we know what happened. I mean, this country, questions of integrity or what happens is always a concern. But there is that story around Mobitele and all that. But the most important thing, I think, Ribal, in my view, is that today M-Pesa is linked at the waist with Safaricom, because that's the platform on which it is based, is telecom. Without it, it can't function. So I think even as the government wants to pursue and bundling, it has to be alive to that fact that these things are related, and so. But I want to come back to the point which you raised earlier with the digital currency. I think it doesn't really matter how many people are on smartphones. You heard what Kiprono said when Safaricom started M-Pesa. How many people are in Kenya had mobile phones? Very few. And today 30 million and counting. So the same thing, even if 50% of the country has a smartphone, by the time this digital currency is up and running in the next few years and so forth, you will see the numbers will have gone up. But I want to express concern really on this digital currency thing. One, central bank is a regulator. So who is going to regulate the regulator? That is a matter that I think, that's why I'm more keen on looking at what are the procedures, what are the processes, what are the, the devil is in the detail. Let's see what central bank will come up with in terms of operationalization and control of this digital currency. Otherwise, I agree with Kiprono that as much as possible, and I have said this when I heard about this first time. I remember tweeting that the central bank needs to focus on its core mandate and leave businesses to banks and other institutions, because their role will be regulation. And if they get into these things, because there are concerns in this country always about government. When it is government institutions, there are always concerns, let me tell you, on questions of integrity, on government doing things behind the scenes in those institutions. And so there's questions of trust deficit in government institutions. So I'll be concerned, and that's why I'm very interested in how, before they roll out, there has to be very active and significant public participation, really, particularly of institutions, that are already involved in financial businesses. So I think the technology, the innovation is welcome, but how is a key question, and particularly when it is central bank, and it's an institution that is largely run, in it is board, it is governance, everything is done by government. So we have to be a bit cautious, and I think for me that is the key thing. Who's going to regulate them, and what exactly, how are they going to run this thing? For me, that is the main concern in this matter.
But the more imperative question then would be, what a threat also is a digital currency to M-Pesa? Because now if I can transact with a digital currency on my phone, at the end of the day, yeah, maybe the infrastructure is from Safaricom, but in terms of shares, how will it also eat and nibble, on the markets of Safaricom at the end of the day? Because it will be more or less the same with M-Pesa that I have a digital currency.
No, it will.
It will. So this is a big threat for M-Pesa, as it were.
In the long term, yes, it has to. You see, there's a friend of mine from the US, and every time he sees me using M-Pesa, we go to a restaurant, every time he wants to make a payment, he pulls out his credit card. I keep telling him, why don't you just register M-Pesa and use M-Pesa? He says, no, my friend, I'm used to, in the US, we use our credit cards to make all our transactions. And so he doesn't want to let go of that. But I think there's no doubt that any innovative product that would be superior, and I've mentioned earlier, the thing about M-Pesa, which you have to beat, is the efficiency. Within minutes, you can make your payments without any struggle. It provides opportunities even to institutions, to facilities like Fuliza and loans, and so everything is done in moments. If that digital currency, in terms of efficiency, in terms of reliability, in terms of trust, matches this M-Pesa, then definitely it is going to eat into the market. But I'm telling you, it's not going to be that easy. Look at M-Pesa, how many times it has shut down in the last 10, 15 years. To my knowledge, you can count it, not more than 2, 3, 4 times, except when they shut it down for maintenance and they would announce that the system would. But so all those factors will determine whether this digital currency would be a competitor to Safaricom in any significant way.
Right. Let's just be clear. Yes.
Your question is what is wrong with Kenya? Because your question is, will digital currency eat onto M-Pesa? And if our mentality of regulation is a mentality of eating onto M-Pesa, we're getting it wrong. And I think it boils down to what we were saying about the regulator. Because it cannot be an approach which says, the Bali is successful, let us now get him down. Because it's a zero-sum game. I think the question must be, how best do we move our entire economy from being cash-based to cashless? And that must be based on building onto what M-Pesa has done and not taking away from it. And it boils down to one fundamental thing that Bilo said. What's the role of the regulator? The regulator's role cannot be a trader. The regulator's role must be to provide a facilitative environment for business to thrive. So the question we must be asking ourselves as we promote the digital currency, where are we starting from? We're not starting from a country where we do not have mobile market. We're starting from a framework where Safaricom and through M-Pesa has done this. So the question must be, as we go to the next level, what are we doing to build onto that? But if our only approach, and that for me is my greatest concern, if our only approach is a concern to say, M-Pesa has been doing this, it is not the right way to do, let us then promote digital currency with a view to taking away the business from Safaricom to taking it to banking companies. For me, I think it's, to say it plainly, I think it's stupid.
Right. Kipron.
I concur with his views. I have nothing more to add on the Safaricom conversation.
Okay. We can wind up on that bit as well, and we'll see how this will pan out. And let's gravitate our discussion now to what is happening right now with the bond markets, where Kenya's corporate bond markets is upbeat after KCB outlined plans to issue a green bond, adding to a string of recent bond issues that have excited the market after more than a decade of defaults and corporate failures. Now the lender plans to make an entry to the corporate market by floating a green bond, the revelations of which come shortly after the successful debut of Kenya Mortgage Refinancing or Refinance Company bond that was oversubscribed spells out better tidings in the nascent sector. The International Finance Corporation gobbled up $36.97 million worth of bonds issued by KMRC, becoming one of the largest debt investors in the firm. A successful green bond launched by KCB will contribute to what is a recovering trend in the corporate bond market. It will also highlight climate sustainability as a theme in the industry, as the bank is set to invest the proceeds in sustainable investments. And we know KCB has been very big in terms of sustainability, integrated reporting. Of course, when we talk about economy, social and governance, it has been on that particular front at the end of the day. With the climate change loan, also that has been big on the portfolio of KCB. We want now to drill deeper and look at this particular green market bond that KCB is about to launch. Starting with Econ, we had KMRC, as I've mentioned. At least now this will be the 6th bond that will be floated.
Debal, firstly,
the green bonds, yes.
As the chairman of the NSC, I would really like to laud KCB under the leadership of Joshua Oigara. I mean, this is a very, very momentous time for them. And you know that KCB became the first bank to get Green Climate Fund accreditation. They put in their request in 2007, and today they are amongst the banks that are leading the charge in terms of green financing. Now, Kenya is a signatory to the Paris Accord. And by virtue of being a signatory of the Paris Accord, we are, part of the global movement to ensure a more sustainable world. At the NSC, we are also trying right now to encourage all listed companies to do ESG reporting as part of their financial reporting. Safaricom is doing that, Equity Bank is doing that, KCB and many other banks and many other corporates are following suit. ESG means environment, sustainability and governance. Yes. So KCB, through the green bond, has put forward projects worth between 50 and 250 million US dollars. The whole purpose of green funding is to finance projects that have a benefit to the environment. Sustainable fisheries, sustainable agriculture, sustainable forestry, also to finance projects that are aimed at reducing pollution and just creating a world that we are able to bequeath to the generations to come. Green bonds in Kenya they're not new. We actually did list the first green bond in the NSC in the year 2020 for the Econ Group that raised about 4.3 billion, cross-listed between Nairobi Stock Exchange, Securities Exchange and the London Stock Exchange. So for me, I think it's the way to go. We need to really come to terms with the fact that the world in its current formation, with the practices of society and the human population, is not going to be one that we can bequeath to our generations to come. We actually face an existential crisis. So by seeing KCB do this, I think for me is a step in the right direction. It must be encouraged, and we want to see not just large corporates embracing ESG and embracing green practices, but we even want to see that move into the SME sector, into the micro and mid-sized companies. We would like actually the whole world to be sensitized to the facts that if we don't do something about our environment, then we're not going to have a future. I mean, a world to hand over to our children.
So really a big shot in the arm for the corporate bond market. There was a slump and a plateauing. What really informed that now we can see there's a surge that is coming up slowly? For the longest time, we can see there was a slump.
You see, one thing that's that I want to speak to again is, the capital markets of Kenya have a very unique problem. The problem we have is a supply side issue. The demand for our products far exceeds the supply. The other day you talked about the KMRC. KMRC floated a bond, and that's a Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company that we launched the CS National Treasury launched last Thursday, together with the Governor of Central Bank at the exchange. And it was oversubscribed 400%. The Econ Green Bond was oversubscribed. Literally all the corporate bonds that we have put out in the market and also the sovereign bonds are oversubscribed. What does that mean? It means that there's more money chasing products than there are products. So for me, actually what I've been trying to do under my tenure as a chair of the NSC is to encourage for more listings. We need to see the government come to the party with more enterprises to list. I mean, and I always have ascribed to the thinking that the business of government is government, and the business of business is business. So what we want to see is companies like Kenya Pipeline, that the government has done a very good job at restructuring and reforming Kenya Pipeline. We would like to see companies like Kenya Re get listed. We would like to see even the government take a bold step to look at enterprises like Kenya Ports Authority. Kenya Ports Authority would arguably be almost as large, or if not larger, than Safaricom. if you look at the size of the business that they're doing. So we want to see these companies brought to the market. And like I said, the demand side has no issue. We are oversubscribed on almost everything that goes to the market. So we need to actually create more products. Who are the buyers? Interesting phenomenon again. 70% of the money that's chasing products, that's both bonds and equities in the market, is foreign funding. Foreign family offices, foreign pension funds, and etc. 30% are local. Again, the pension funds, private individuals, etc. The retail market is fairly small. But we want to see a market here that's more mature. South Africa has got almost 500 listed companies. They have a lot of bonds. We want to get companies to come to the market and use the instruments of the market to raise capital. Econ, which is a private company in Kenya, they were able to raise 4.3 billion to do the university hostelry and a green bond. By virtue of it being a green bond, it means that the projects that are being financed meet a certain minimum criteria in terms of sustainability of the environment.
So they're green compliant, so to speak.
Yes.
Let's say from Professor Collins Odote.
First, Kiprona says that the green bond is not new in Kenya. I said it is 2020. 2020 is fairly new, just 2 years ago. And I make that as the first, I think, starting point, because it is in that year 2020 that KCB got accreditation from the Climate Fund to be able to be the first company in Kenya, the first bank in Kenya, to be able to provide projects that mitigate and adapt to the environment. And that is huge. It is huge because it just didn't happen by accident. KCB has been working. I know two friends of mine from the university that have actually supported KCB in its effort to get that accreditation. And what does that mean? It means that therefore under the Paris Accord, because the Paris Accord has frameworks that enable the private sector to participate in climate action. Participate in action that seek to mitigate the environment and to mitigate climate change and to adapt to climate change. That means that they can tap onto the international financial support. They can be able to get money from the international market and be able to use that money to come and support different sectors, including what Kiprona says, SMEs, so that you're able to provide money to SMEs. So I think the listing of the green bond that is happening now, I think is a continuation of that leadership role that KCB has carved out for itself in the area of climate action. And why that is important to celebrate, again, taking the theme that we've been discussing since morning, the theme of innovation. I think if we want to move to be competitive in the new world, we must be willing to move into uncharted territory. We must start playing in leagues that are new. And I think what KCB has done is borrow and live. Maybe it has something to do with the friendship that Oigara had with Michael Joseph. It's borrow and live from Safaricom and be innovative. And as opposed to just fighting in terms of, we are losing customers from the banking. They say, no, let's move to a new area. Let's move to the area of climate action. How can we ensure that, as opposed to just being told that, you businesses, you are supporting companies that are polluting the environment, you are funding this business that is manufacturing, and as part of it, they are contributing to climate change, we will flip that around and ask ourselves, what are the opportunities for climate mitigation? What are the opportunities for climate adaptation? For example, I think around 4 weeks ago, we were having the debate with Bunyasi about solar energy, which is a huge contributor to climate action. So as opposed to funding dirty fuels, you will be funding efforts in terms of innovations around clean sources of fuel. That enables you to be able to, as a business, say, in terms of even our work, in terms of even our ESG reporting, we are environmentally sustainable, but at the same time, we're taking advantage of business opportunity. And I think that's what KCB has done, and for me, it's something to be lauded. What does that then mean for our conversation about the regulator, CBK? It again means that in terms of their thinking too, they must start thinking in that same manner in terms of, so what are the innovative ways by which we can be able to facilitate our banking sector to be innovative and our banking sector to be able to emulate the good work that KCB is doing from an environmental sustainability perspective.
All right, and when we talk about integrated reporting right now, it's a good thing that everyone is moving towards the ESG, as it were, but should they be shoehorned to move towards ESG, Bilokero, or if the Capital Markets Authority requires that all listed companies also should be giving this ESG report or the integrated report, why then are we not really quick off the mark to actually align ourselves in that angle, so that yes, the green imperative is something that should be shaking into place in every listed company at the end of the day. It seems like this is a choice for you to go green. But looking at where the world is headed right now with the threat of global warming and of course the effects of climate change, that should be a must for every company.
Yes, well, I think it's a progressive, when you introduce standards, whether it's in audits or this kind of carbon audits or this kind of ESGs and so forth, I think it's progressive. It's appropriate that the government started with the blue chip companies quoted on the stock exchange, and then this continues to be enforced, and I think I'm sure, as Kiprono will tell you probably later, these things will become not just guidelines which are voluntary, but it will be enforced and so that it becomes regulatory and a requirement. Let me say this. I want to just emphasize the point my colleagues have mentioned, that this green funds is huge globally. I mean, it's hundreds of billions of dollars are available, not just to the private sector, even to government, which our government with forests like Mao and all these are not taking advantage of, because you have an opportunity to take advantage of the amount of you can't imagine how much money the UN, the World Banks and the private sector globally, international institutions have availed. And I'm happy that these banks in Kenya are taking Q and actually floating bonds in this direction. But I want to just echo what Kiprono said. The last 10 years, in my view, the government seems to have rolled back the role of capital markets. A few years ago, many years ago, like the time of Kibaki and before, the trend has been to deepen the commercial, the capital market, bring more of the state institutions into the private sector through IPOs and so forth, and really give Kenyans an opportunity to have to invest, to save and invest, so that we can grow the economy and grow this country. But lately we have seen a government trying to renationalize, even attempt to nationalize institutions like Kenya Airways, and deny that opportunity for many of you. Remember the shoe industries, many of them were to be privatized, but the last 10 years that has also been scrapped, and I think so this is why you find NSE in terms of IPOs, in terms of listings, it's not been very active in the last decade or so, and I think government needs to the only thing that the government wants from capital markets is borrowing, and that is with banks, and we'll deal with that I think when we come to banks, but I think it's very, very encouraging to see that the private sector, the commercial banks and others are going out to the capital markets and whether through the green bonds or not, but I think that itself is a very important. It shows that there is opportunity really for funding, and the fact that Kenya, what he said about 70% of it being foreigners is a fact in many of the developing countries. I mean, there's a huge fund, there's a lot of money out there in the developed world and looking for opportunities for investment. And so when these bonds and other IPOs are in these developing countries, emerging nations, a lot of these people in the foreign developed nations want to invest. And so there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of money out there, and the government needs to really encourage the participation in the capital markets. I think for me that is something that is critical at this age.
Right. Yeah, even as we're looking at the ESG, that is economic sustainability and governance, can we maybe also never gaze on the governance beat with the KCB right now, and looking at the tenure of Joshua Egara, which is supposed to be, of course, lapsing, but we understand furtively the board has extended at least a year on its term, which really flouts, the requirement of the corporate governance that you cannot exceed a decade So is there any rhyme or reason? So even if we can load them on the grim imperative, or that is very flashy, sanguine and optimistic, that is the road they're taking right now. But when it comes to corporate governance, an extension of its term for a year, as they're seeking for a suitable, person to take over, where is the governance there?
I think for me, Debal, one thing for sure is that we have a very capable regulatory environment for the financial sector in Kenya. The central bank is a proactive regulator, and I'm sure that they have taken cognizance of all the facts, material facts, before they gave the extension of 1 year for Joshua Oigara. KCB is perhaps the second largest bank in Kenya, with multiple stakeholders. And, what I did note is that they have extended his term by 1 year, and I'm certain that this is probably in order to provide for proper transition. You know that there was a period of time that KCB did not have a chairman of the board. And the chairman, who is currently in office, I think has only been there for 1.5 or 2 years. So, when you are handling an enterprise of that magnitude, I think I'm certain that by the time the Central Bank of Kenya gave the 1 year extension, they must have done it taking cognizance of all the material facts around the extension of Mr. Oigara. I did meet with him a few days ago, and he is actually very much in the mindset that he's at the last leg of his career. And obviously, like many people, I wonder, because Joshua is a very young man, and he's done a sterling job, and I kept asking what next. I mean, I thought maybe he would throw his hat in the ring to go into politics or something, but he does seem to have a plan, and I personally am not too concerned. I'm sure it was done within the strict guidelines of the governance structure provided by the regulator, the Central Bank of Kenya, as well as the enabling memorandum and articles of association of the bank itself. Yes.
But is this the extension unbeknownst to the shareholders, and of course, what will be the wisest fashion to actually handle it, that you should have as the stakeholders, all of them also involved in this particular process, and announcing the extension formally, just the way you normally have the earning calls at the end of the day?
Dubala, I'm a shareholder of KCB, and this is the only time that I'm going to disagree with Kiprono, and it has nothing to do with the person of Oigara. I think it speaks to a failure in our governance arrangement, and that is the failure of transition and succession planning. Because even when Oigara came in, if you remember a decade ago, there was some little turbulence in terms of who is going to take over, in terms of I think then it was Martin Ward. That Martin has been very successful. How will we get? And that process again was slightly uneasy, but Joshua has done an excellent job. I think the one thing that companies must learn is that rules are there to be implemented, and those rules have nothing to do with the success of the person who is there, because then you stop. If you don't follow them well, you stop corporate predictability, and you stop the corporate entity running as a corporate entity, and you start personalizing things. I think while the extension may have been done within the law, and while CBK may have looked at all things, but just remember, a short while ago we've been complaining about CBK. So I'm not going to stop complaining about them. I think the thing that we must learn is to be able to deal with questions about succession planning and transition well. Even the lack of a chair for some time was wrong, because if you have a company that is as successful and as big as KCB, it should never lack a chair even for one day, because the business must go on. Secondly, for 10 years KCB knew that the maximum term of their CEO was 2 terms of 10 years. We cannot wait until the 10th year and say, we now need an extra year for us to be able to identify a successor. That is how you get rid of term limits when you start that kind of thing. If you allow it, you will then be able to hear soon, we have not gotten a successor for the president, let's give him an extension of 1 year to look for somebody else. I think it is, from a governance perspective, it is wrong, and it must be called out.
But it is wrong, it must be called out. And if we may recall as well, Bill Okero, we had KCB having a chair without a board. Mohamed Nyaoga was not really overseeing any directors within that particular board. And this is the same KCB, this is the same CBK that we're talking about right now, overseeing the succession at KCB. with an extension of Joshua Egara. So if in the House did not really have it right, then how is it going to be right with this particular extension? Your view?
Now, my view, I have been opposed to the when the law was amended to bring in the on the CBK, really, so that it can, because CBK, we wanted the governor to run it the way it's been. But I think a board with a chair, supervising the central bank itself, that alone took quite a bit of time for people to accept. But there's no doubt in my mind that it's not about success. Joshua has done a great job in KCB and so forth, but the issue is about corporate governance and our commitment to the role, to the law. I think that is very important. I think it's very important. And you've seen when people overstay, quite often then things start unraveling. You saw what happened during the Naikuni with Kenya Airways, and there are many other examples. As they say there is a saying in Ghana that a bird that sits too long on a tree invites stones. I think corporate governance is critical, particularly in our blue chip companies. I don't think there should be any uncertainty. I think the investors in these institutions globally and locally. I think it's very important that the government should not allow or any exceptions, whatever, to the rules in regards to institutions like this one. So in my view, really, I agree with what my colleague Collins has said, that this should not have been allowed to happen, and they should have done their work well before the term came to an end for Joshua.
Right, and I wonder how then they're going to report that with the integrated reporting, right, at the end of the day, on the governors a bit. Right, but let's just wind up on that. But let me come back, because you'd raise an issue of NSE and when it comes to the corporate or the IPOs, I should say, floating at the end of the day. And I want to hear from the chair. We have NSE listed the lowest in Africa when it comes to the IPO pickups. As it is right now, we plateaued for almost a decade. What is the rhyme and reason on this?
Debal, I have been on record many a time, and I will be on record again today, saying that we really need to encourage the state to release more enterprises to the market. There are many good reasons for that. One is the democratization of wealth. Two is the deepening of our own financial market. I mean, the NSE is by far the largest capital market in the East and Central Africa region. I still argue that perhaps we have taken the sovereignty that was bestowed upon us by in Belgium in the 19th century. We take it too far, because I don't understand, for example, why we would see a very small market in Kampala, another very small market in Kigali, when we can actually sit down outside of our sovereignty and create a regional boss that attracts enterprises in the region, as opposed to in the sovereign jurisdictions that we have today. Now, if you look between, as Bill Okero talked about, the Kibaki era had a lot of corporate listings, a lot of state listings, and state-owned enterprise listings has a pull effect to the private sector. So you will note that when Kengen came to the market, you will find another big private enterprise would also come to the market the same year. So there were almost 2 big listings on an annual basis. So you see, by virtue of the fact that there's been a drought of listings, it reduces the momentum of capital market formation. And if you look for the first time, actually the bond market, so bond turnover last year was 956 billion shillings. The bond market is almost the same size today as the equity market. It's almost 3 trillion shillings on either side. So there is a concern, and we are really encouraging governments to look at this thing more robustly. We've talked many times with the CS National Treasury. We've engaged even His Excellency the President. We want them to look at this thing dynamically. Bring the state-owned enterprises on board. We've also asked the Capital Markets Authority, let's look at the incentives to listing that have been at play for the last 20 years. The most significant incentive that we have to listing is that you get a corporate tax reduction of 10% from 30 to 20% for a period of 5 years. That is really literally the most significant incentive. So I'm also encouraging that why don't we relook at the incentives? Why don't we see large family-owned enterprises, the Bidcos of this world, the Brooksides of this world, many large Keroches who right now they're having an issue with their taxation. But many of these enterprises would actually be on a much stronger governance footing if they were in the market owned by a broader range of stakeholders. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer, and I do hope that the next administration will be committed to capital market formation.
Right. Collins.
I want to start from where Kiprono has spoken. I think he's speaking to the wrong people. Let him stop speaking to government. Let him start speaking to the presidential candidates and the coalitions. Because we are where we are because of government. And I think the comparison he gave at the start is a perfect demonstration. The deepening of the capital markets happened during the Kibaki-NAK regime from 2003 to 2013. If you talk to the average middle-class Kenyan in Nairobi, they bought their first shares, Kiprono, during that time. The last IPO was during that time. So we are where we are essentially because of the Jubilee government. The 9 years has been a 9 years of not focusing on the capital markets, focusing largely on other things. And I think that's where we have lost it. So we require that there's an engagement with the presidential candidates and coalition. Unfortunately, the manifestos are not yet out, but unfortunately in the conversations that you hear from them, I doubt whether they know that the capital markets exist, Kiprono. It is not in their radar. So if we hope that they will learn it once they go in, we are missing the point. I think the engagement must start happening now so that they recognize that as part of innovation, as part of deepening our economy, the capital markets plays a very, very critical role. Its health is an indicator of our economic health. Ignoring it is a recipe for our trouble. And the Jubilee government has ignored the capital markets formation for the last 9 years. It is not part of the equation. No wonder even Kenyans, if you ask the ordinary Kenyans who bought their first share in 2013, they will tell you that they stopped buying their share in 2013. They will even tell you that they do not know about the CDSC account. They have no idea. They will even tell you that nowadays when they get dividends, they don't know where it is from, they don't know how many shares they have. And that's an indication of where we are in terms of the prioritization we give the Capital Markets Authority, which is a mistake. And it's only when we give prioritization when issues about new IPOs will come in, when issues about trade. Because the success for me of the Capital Markets Authority will not be about the big traders. It will be the ordinary Kenyans moving in their shares from one place to the other, focusing on what's happening. It is those ordinary people who will then be concerned. When we are talking about KCB, the ordinary shareholder will now know that we care about KCB, we care about what's going on. And I think the last 9 years has been one of running away from and ignoring the Capital Markets Authority. I hope that in August there can be a reset in terms of a relationship with it.
All right, thank you. Bill Okero, of course, that will be the last of our comments because also we had pinched for time, briefly.
No, my firm was involved in as registrars in the IPOs for Mumias, for Safaricom, for Kengen, and so forth. And I know the excitement really, it generated when those IPOs generated in the public, and how millions of Kenyans tried to invest in whatever little they had. So I think the point cannot be overemphasized that government and the private sector, I think, also needs to appreciate that capital markets is the place to be. If you want to raise funding, not just to raise funding, but it also is an opportunity when you are listed to comply with the corporate governance, rules, for accountability, gets enhanced and so forth. So I think I want to move in this day and age from the government only, but go also to the private sector. I think the point raised by Kiprono, that the private sector, family-owned businesses also need to go to enlist. It's very important. I think it's very important. And then you get to ask, I do family business and we all are there. But there's that fear of control, fear about ownership, dividend policies of many of the private, many of the companies listed. And so there are a lot of issues which I think you need a bit of sensitization, awareness. NSC itself needs to do quite a bit of work to try and create that awareness and and bring out all these benefits like the taxation and so forth, and because there are a lot of people out there who really we all rely on banks, and I think we fail to appreciate that there's an alternative funding, and from the equity funding in the capital markets, which is not as harsh as debt. So I think there is need to deepen the capital markets, and I think both government and the private sector, including NSC, need to do quite a bit to try and deepen that market and give Kenyans an opportunity. But that the Kenyans are there, people are there, really, they want to invest, and that opportunity is what they don't have. So I think it's an opportunity that we need to work on. I agree with Collins that the environment, the political environment is critical. Because it's government that gives direction. It's government that can throw its weight behind this particular thing and give that impetus by starting from its own. There are a lot of steps. We still have the Kenatkos of this world. We have 500, nearly 400, 500 state corporations. Some of them don't even make sense. Why the government would be selling anything from eggs and meat to running taxis to, there are a lot of things that the government can really look at, and they're struggling with, and they need to offload, and Kenyans would be happy to participate.
Right. Well, Kero, former senator and also consummate businessman, thank you for coming through this morning. Also the chair of the Ruby Securities Exchange. This is Prolo Kitoni. Thank you for coming through this morning. And also Professor Collins Odote, who is the Assistant Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Nairobi, columnist to the Business Daily. Thank you for coming through. I want to give you time to give your closing remarks. I'm being hounded out of the studio because we're pinched for time, but nonetheless, thank you for this very cogent discussion. We wanted to look at other subjects as well. Equity Bank with the supernormal profit as well. We needed to tackle that as well. And the new roads and the taxes, expressway, people also have been complaining about the new toll charges that the MPs also have passed. I think that will be a subject for another day. Thank you for your valid company. You've been watching Sokoni here on Morning Pride. My name is Dibala Nair. Don't go away. Ashley Bazuri is coming up with, of course, the gender question. Up next. Asante.